I was so angry. And I was also, as always, tapping into my base setting of dissolving and yielding to whatever teaching and healing is coming through. It's always coming through, even if I'm in a down or having a struggle. I'm like, where is my system being worked? Staying connected, attempting to meditate. I was not asleep. Felt like a daydream. And suddenly I felt a tingling on my breastbone and my heart opened. And this has never happened before or since in this way. And this love came out, very palpable. And my human self was actually trying to grab it back. I was like, he doesn't deserve that. It was so funny to see the struggle between my ego self and my higher self in that moment. And then, but this big ball of love went all the way to Sacramento, and it went right in this is the capital of California where all the politicians are, went right into his body. And I could feel it go in. He received it. And then I was symptom free from head to toe.
Welcome, beautiful beings, to season 2 of the Cosmic Love Antenna podcast with your host, Harrison Ma. This podcast sets the loving intention of creating the mystical space needed to pull back the layers restricting health, alignment, and love. Now let's walk you home to your cosmic spiritual heart space. Before we continue this beautiful chat today, wonderful souls, I need to jump in here to share something really exciting. If you've been following these episodes or you've been following me on social media, you know that I am in the process of releasing my first book, Your Cosmic Love Antenna, Define, Embody, and Emit Your Unique Frequency of Love. And at the time of this episode release, pre-orders are now open. If you have been pulled to this show, if you're looking to understand the what, the how, and the why of love, if you're looking to apply some of the tools connected to your chakras, inner child, releasing religious trauma, ancestral healing, emotional release, and so much more, then this beautiful expression from my heart to yours is for you. If you are looking to channel more of your unique gifts and the divine frequency that you are, these pages will open all of this up. And if you're interested, all you need to do is go to cosmicloveantenna.com. That's cosmicloveantenna.com. And you can pre-order this book right now. If you pre-order, click on that link, put in your email, you're going to get access to some special gifts that I'm only offering to those who get in before I release it fully. These gifts are going to be some more channeled meditations, activations, and some other surprises from my heart to yours. So head over to cosmicloveantenna.com, pre-order this beautiful expression, and I can't wait to hear how it shifts your life. If you're listening to this after pre-order sales, that same link can be also used to go to the direct purchase link. Sending love, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of this episode today. Afternoon, evening, morning, beautiful beings. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the flow today. And now hold that thought, hold that word in your heart, and I'll come back to it in a second. Before I get the divine pleasure to introduce the beautiful woman, the beautiful soul I have here on the show today, I just want to take a moment to give you, the beautiful listener, some love and some gratitude. Thank you for giving us your ears today. I hope this discussion and this cosmic dance brings you some love. Remember, if it does hit that deep heart spiritual space, you can share this out far and wide with a lover, a friend, a family member that you appreciate and that you connect to very deeply. If you gain insights out of this chat today, how you can support the show is by heading over to Apple, Spotify, leaving your feedback and reviews. And remember to listen to the end of this discussion, because I can already tell just by having a pre-chat with my beautiful friend here today that we're going to get into some deep conversations. So stick around to the end. With that all in hand, I want to introduce the lovely, divine Michelle today. Michelle is a powerful cranial osteopath. She is she has a family medicine background. She's a clinical professor and teacher, but ultimately while all those things are beautiful and powerful and important, she is a loving and intuitive soul. And today we are going to talk about flow is medicine. What is the consciousness of the body and how it helps us expand that, the spiritual input versus the spiritual energy that is inside of us, the presence of the breath, water, masculine and feminine, and so much more. Michelle, welcome to the Cosmic Love Antenna.
I have chills all over my body. I love being here with you. Thank you for that beautiful introduction.
Well, Michelle, I think it's really interesting. I don't know if you remember this, but we first connected on Clubhouse through the voice, right? So we connected through our voice, and then we stayed in touch through images and social media. And now this is the first time, I'm getting to see you in the physical form, but it doesn't feel like the first time. It doesn't feel, even with those past background. So I'm wondering, how does that feel for you, my friend?
I feel like such a different person. That feels like eons ago.
Right.
Like we've traveled so far, and I've been on a healing journey. I've always been on a healing journey, but this last year especially has just been this really steep curve, and you've popped in all over the place. Like you're a fellow traveler. That's how you feel to me. And even in this moment, I'm seeing your face for the first time. I'm receiving so much light into my body. I'm feeling like I'm receiving a healing in this conversation. I think I always feel like I'm receiving a healing when I tune into you, and now we just turned up the dial a little bit. So I'm feeling grateful.
I receive all that love, Michelle. It highlights I'm sure you're aware of this and can relate to this. The work that we do and people listening, it moves beyond time and space. So it doesn't really matter if I'm physically with you or I'm fit, like it all works. But at the same time, when we do add in the physical, even if it's just the visualization of seeing someone, there is an extra layer. There is an extra, sensory input that expands that opening, right? That almost what I see in my third eye is it opens up a deeper channel for the light to come in. Does that resonate?
Yes, I heard the word portal, actually.
Yeah. It's a beautiful word for it. So, Michelle, I wanted to talk to you today about, I think this is really the work that you do is flow is medicine. And that is the title of this episode today. And I have questions, different parts that we're going to break down in regards to this, but I do want to throw to you first here to give us a breakdown of what this means to you, and then we can jump off from there.
Thank you. I was just posting about it this morning. Flow is so literal. And as an osteopath, I work with, yes, the fluids of the body, but I consider the life force circulation the primary fluid of the body. And we recognize, and we study a lot of embryology, that healing is actually a recapitulation of growth from our origin, and that growth happens in spirals. And that when we're in coherence and able to basically log on to the divine, and this is a lot of what I do, is come on, let's log on, folks. Let's ground into the feminine earth and log on to the masculine higher realm and receive this holding and this connection and this download of power and intelligence that's available at all times. And so for me, flow is about activating that larger central channel in context with all of the forces of nature and the universe, and living as a wave, living as our native, fluid, dynamic, limitless, very potent and intelligent selves. And it is a wave every day. And in this moment, I'm tuning into how that wave is expressing through the midline of my body. Midline is a big word in osteopathy. It's a big word in Vedic teachings. It's a big word in Taoist teaching. It's basically how it is, in a sense, the reference of our existence, where the subtle and physical bodies come into union and integration. So,
what What an introduction. Where do I start, my friend? So first of all, that was beautiful. And I think if people left right now, I highly recommend you don't, but people left right now, that would be a beautiful introduction and a beautiful summary of why I really wanted to have a chat with you. Because let me pull out one word that you said, and it's not just the central column, but the central channel. And I would ask people to maybe expand that and go into the question of, okay, if I have that central channel, what am I channeling, right? What is moving through there? Is it just all of the beautiful fluids and biochemical movements and procedures that make up our beautiful human form? Or is there something deeper, right? Once we start to open up that column, do we invite in a deeper layer, a deeper essence of ourself? What comes up around that, my friend?
Something very specific in this moment. We're no longer separate. We are, for ourself we become one. We become part of everything, connected to everything, resonant with everything. And there's no possibility of loneliness in that space, right? And feeling of lack and separation. Those sources, those illusions that drive us to live in ways that are not true to our nature.
Can underline the illusion word, because I think that is the root of suffering in many ways, right? Michelle, for people that don't know, and part of me doesn't know, being an osteopath, what is the specific, when you're trained and as an osteopath, what does that fall under? So if I come to you as a client, what am I looking to get out of our interaction?
Thank you for that question. Like in every discipline, there's quite a range, right? You have chiropractors who work energetically and work structurally, and we are, and it also depends on where you're trained. So if you're trained in Canada or Europe, you're not a medical doctor. But in the US, we go through medical school and there's an integration of, I'd like to say, we take the best of conventional medicine, which to me is quite lacking, and combine it with the wisdom and knowledge of working with the body in this very deep way that initiated through a frontier physician named Andrew Taylor Still in the middle of the 1800s, who may have been influenced by Asian immigrants and also Native Americans, and clearly was a very spiritually connected man. So we work with our hands, and also sometimes without hands, with that blend of how the energetics and the structural really are one. So in the sense of flow versus move a part of the body, I drop in and swim with the body and notice where the waves are wanting to reorganize. And eventually we may get to the thing that the person's complaining about, but the body's in charge. It's very surrendered. It's very yielded. The way I practice osteopathy, you might say, is a very feminine approach. And sometimes the feminine calls for very strong masculine. And I'll almost be in a trance and come in with a very forceful adjustment and actually move joints and sometimes even rip adhesions. It surprises me. I never know what she's going to do.
I as soon as you said you drop into a trance, I saw that image of you perfectly, my friend. It would be such a divine gift to be in that presence of you, not just receiving, physiological support, but then having that channel that you are, and maybe you don't identify that as that, but I'm projecting that onto you, that channel that you are coming through, and then you using that energetic expression, right?
Absolutely.
A question that bubbles up around that, and you hit it a little bit, but I want to push it with a bit more love here. You said that the conventional medicine system is lacking in many ways, and I think for a lot of people listening to this show, this is not a new perspective. I've shared this in many different angles. But I'm wondering, let me be specific with the question. Do you think a big part of why that the Western medical system is lacking is because it doesn't bring in this deeper spiritual lens and this channeling view that you so readily incorporate?
We're the first system in the history of humans that doesn't use energy for healing. Straight up. We really can't heal without access to the greater intelligence and guidance. And then, of course, the obvious bit where medicine's been co-opted by profit. It simply has been. The education has deteriorated vastly since early in the 70s. I actually have a Merck manual, one of our Bibles, which had a lot of beautiful healing wisdom in it. And that's all been removed. So, it doesn't make anybody any money to be well in this system. And I also don't demonize it in the sense that what you resist persists. And I'm always working on that edge of transforming the darkness and the demon into the ally. And I believe you and I share that knowing, that deep knowing, that it is only by loving that we alchemize. I actually have a story I could tell. Oh my God. I'm so excited to tell this story. I'm almost going to cry. Okay. I was lying in my bed 5 years ago, feeling very, very ill and achy and glandy and headache and bitter. And I was perseverating on this resentment I had toward this senator who was trying to advance this very bad bill, wasn't protecting children. I was so angry. And I was also, as always, tapping into my base setting of dissolving and yielding to whatever teaching and healing is coming through. It's always coming through, even if I'm in a down or having a struggle. I'm like, where is my system being worked? Staying connected, attempting to meditate. I was not asleep. Felt like a daydream. And suddenly I felt a tingling on my breastbone and my heart opened. And this has never happened before or since in this way. And this love came out, very palpable. And my human self was actually trying to grab it back. I was like, he doesn't deserve that. It was so funny to see the struggle between my ego self and my higher self in that moment. But this big ball of love went all the way to Sacramento, and it went right in this is the capital, California, where all the politicians are, went right into his body. And I could feel it go in. He received it. And then I was symptom free from head to toe in a handful of seconds.
So I'm so happy you told this story, my friend, because this actually, you've unintentionally confirmed a hypothesis that I have of, I'm going to see if I can break this down. So what you're describing is, meeting hatred with love, meeting anger with love, meeting judgment with love, meeting the external, all those external elements with love. But I think that even, for people that don't practice that, we can understand it to a degree, right? You can understand, okay, I've heard this before, I understand it. But another piece of this, which is what you just experienced, is when we make the choice to meet an external shadow with our love, we also heal the part of us that is in that external shadow, right? Because we are, from a spiritual lens, we know that there is no objective outside world. There is just the outside world that we project from our internal state of consciousness. So if I'm perceiving anger, judgment, hatred, whatever the thing is in the external world, there is most likely that same resonance inside of me somewhere, mostly unconscious. So in the act of love for that external piece, I also love the piece in me that's of that same resonance.
That's right. You got it. Absolutely. And there, even when people say them, like those guys, the dude that I'm like, well, actually there isn't any us or them. My body says that to me when I hear those words. It's not like a mental construct where I think it's a good idea. right? That's another part of what osteopathy is. The body knows, tapping into I've had so many experiences where my mind and my body were saying opposite things. In fact, they're mostly saying opposite things because my mind, when not functioning purely as an extension of my body wisdom, which is what our minds are, right? They say we only use 10% of our intelligence. Well, I believe it's because we don't use our minds as extensions of our hearts and our bodies. And then, we're acculturated and we're very stupid. We're silly. And we love those parts of ourselves as well. I find it very adorable. And it's just so humorous and amusing and entertaining to have those moments where I'm really noticing that the dialogues are so different between what my heart is saying and what my mind is saying. And of course, the heart always wins.
Yeah. This is the cosmic dance that I refer to all the time. And I get the pleasure to be in these dances with guests like you, but it's also an internal dance, right? Between that ego mind structure and our divine channel, right? It doesn't have to be a battle, right? The muscle builds as the devotion builds, the battle becomes less, right? Michelle, I'm already enjoying this chat so much. It's so beautiful to be here with you. I was telling you, I went through your website yesterday and was pulling out some pieces that really resonated with my heart within all the work that you do. And I think the next component here within this, flow as medicine topic today is the role of water, the role of water as specifically the water that's inside of us as the conduit and the channel of consciousness. So I'm wondering what bubbles up around this.
This is my passion, my hobby. I'm a bit of a water science nerd, and I'm involved with some gorgeous big projects. And basically, the first thing I named inside myself when you brought open this topic is that obviously water conducts electricity. It's also a holder of coherence, right? So once there are ways to create coherence in the water in our bodies, all the fluids in our bodies, and the life force, of course, is in partnership with the water. Neither really manifest independently with any power or influence. And so I love all the ways, firstly, that really relating to water in this conscious way has the potential not only to vastly support health in the body, but also restoring of soils and responding to the, issues of water availability all over the world. It has so into that in that way, I've been working with scientists for years on ways that we can create coherence in the water that we consume in our homes and our gardens and showers. And, well, we really can create coherence in water simply with intention. And that does take building the muscle. It does take the logging on and actually the broadening of the central channel and the expanding of the meridians and the renewing of the neurons that we were born really powerfully expressed in, and that slowly go dormant and asleep as we align with the collective, somewhat less conscious, beautiful thing we're experiencing on the planet that's actually cultivating us very powerfully. I don't think any of this is a mistake. And it's difficult.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole other topic we can get into, but I think the 3D to 5D shift, or the new earth shift, or the many names for the same thing. It's real and it's happening. The age of Aquarius, the archangel, era. There's so many names for the same shift that we're going through. But let's step back a bit. I want to question that's bubbling up.
Water is essential for the 5D shift.
Yes, it is.
Tie it together there.
It really is. And have you ever looked into the work of Veda Austin, my friend? Do you know who this beautiful artist is?
I do not.
Ooh, so I think you should add that to your list of to-dos today, because just to explain it quickly for you and people listening, Veda Austin is an artist that works with water, but specifically frozen water that she adds intention to, that she then uses a microscope to see the structure of the crystals that are changed by the intention and the thought. So most people might have heard of Iamoto, or I'm sure you've heard of Iamoto, my friend, and his work with the crystal, Hidden Messages in Water is his book. But Veda actually takes it a bit further. And I won't spoil it, but she has a lot of beautiful art that she's created through the intention that she's projected into the water. So which brings up a question for you, Michelle. When we start to add our intention to the water that we consume, what do you think is the impact on our ability to express love, either with ourselves or with the outside world?
Two things on that. Well, love to me is consciousness. And when we talk about the central channel, the sun is the heart is the sun of the solar system of all of it. And I felt that with my hands. I actually treated someone very sick for a year to keep them from succumbing to a fatal illness. And ultimately, I've never done that deep a work with any single human. I actually saw all the patterns, all the healing and all the dysfunction ultimately reference the heart. The heart organizes all of it. And it absolutely blew my mind. And to answer your question more specifically, the intention comes from the heart. Our emotions come, our ability to impart coherence, right? And then we infuse this coherence or this in the water, basically holds it, magnifies it, and then cycles it within our bodies, and also then radiates it into the space around us and others. And frankly, you and I in this moment are influencing beings on the other side of the planet. That's how interconnected we are.
Yeah.
Right. And so, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, not just influencing people on the other side of the planet, also influencing people across time. Because people, it's interesting. I've noticed sometimes I get certain feelings in an episode like this, and I won't know what the feeling is, and I don't need to know, but I'm curious about it. And then I'll release the episode months later, and someone will send a comment to me, and I'll be like, "Oh, that's what that feeling was. It was connected to that moment in which I shared that seemingly before this person even listened to the episode." But so I share that because it just shows exactly what you're saying about this powerful heart portal that, and I'll take it further, my friend. I don't think it's just the sun. I think it is the gateway to our multidimensional being of light that we are, right? It is the gateway that we access. And I want to get your thoughts on this, actually. It is the gateway in which we access not just all of our meridians, not just all of our different chakras, not just all of our different subtle energy bodies, but is also the gateway in which we access all the pieces of us that are in different forms, different planets, different aspects that we can connect to through the heart. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm like you, I'm so curious. And I'm also in the never know, because I think you just described probably 1% of what's actually happening. Right. And I love that. I'm just like humming from what you just shared. And I feel like maybe for the hearts are where we connect with love as the substance of all that is, right? Like literally creation. If there wasn't love, there would be nothing, I suppose. It feels infinite significance and relevance and unlimited in its potential to feed and guide and grow us. And because of that knowing, I'm actually speaking from something my body is so clear on, even though I can't quite find the words to describe what I'm feeling. I don't have fear. Like in each moment, of course I do. My human self occasionally succumbs to a worry or a stress. And then deeper than that, I touch into knowing of something of what you just named that we're touching upon together in this moment. I get so excited, and there's a part of me that just knows all is well, all is as it should be.
I think a component of what you're talking about here is presence, right? It's really just being open to not just the current moment. Just for people listening, I'm so deep right now into a lot of Eckhart Tolle's work. I think I'm on like the 6th workshop I'm tuning into with him. So his energy and his being is really big in my field at the moment, and his idea of the power of now and presence really aligns with a lot of the work that I'm doing. But it arises in me a question I want to pose you, my friend, and this is something else that came up as I was reading your website yesterday. The relationship with being present, being in the body, being here and now, and the breath. So I'm wondering if you could speak to, my friend, what are your thoughts, feelings around the role of the breath in flow as medicine?
Okay.
All the big topics. No,
it's good. I have a webinar coming up. Well, that'll have been passed by the time we publish it, but it'll be available. It's all about the breath. I'm speaking to the big Biofield Research University community on Thursday with breath expert Robert Littman, who many people know. And so it's all fresh in my mind. It's beautiful that you brought this up. And so you said presence, and then immediately I heard this beautiful quote by my friend Dr. Zach Bush, who's this big researcher, triple board certified.
I love Zach Bush.
Right, he's amazing, and he actually said, and he qualified this and sort of said it's sort of a bit of a funny thing to say, but if you're not well hydrated, you're not going to have the ability to connect spiritually in these ways, right? Because this requires current. And it's quite literal, and the science explains, science and mathematics explain so much of what we're talking about. And then we have the day-to-day experience of not actually integrating that into our way of living, which is, we see that obviously in medicine, as we named before. But medicine is not so very evidence-based, actually, when you really look at the science. Everyone, just wanting to put a shout out to that. We have evidence for all the good stuff. And so and it's a beautiful thing, because I was looking at Robert's website, and we're so aligned, even though he's not an osteopath. He's a teacher of this practice that is so dear to my heart, which is Continuum practice, founded by Emily Conrad, which is really all about basically dissolving back into our primordial nature and literally be restoring to a substance. And so the breath, as described in osteopathy, or my original learning was all of the breathing that we think of as this physical expression is guided by the primary breath, which is the expanding and contracting of the vital energy field. And that establishes not only the rhythm, but the patterning of all of the physical arriving of structure. In fact, and this is quite literal, I'm going to name again that we look a lot at embryology. And prior to any forming of any structure, there's actually a wave that goes through the center of the ball of cells after conception and marks where the cells will begin. Then the wave guides the forming of the physical structures, and the cells begin to lay down, and the primordial spinal cord is formed, and the establishing of this, physical expression of the central channel as the very first structure in life. So to say, back to your responding to how does, so when I work with breathing, we're going to do a beautiful breathing practice. You'll all receive the replay for that, is to establish the central channel and then become expanded and present as a way to invite in structural breath to find its way to recouple with the primary breath. And at this point, we become, our metabolism, our physiology becomes so efficient there's just no work happening, right? That's the definition of flow. So much more is manifest with so much less effort. And
I was just going to say, I think, I'm just listening to all of this and taking this all in, my friend. And I think that as I listen to that effort piece, it really asserts the importance of, if you take all of what you're saying and then start to incorporate any piece of it, I think the effort is what starts to decrease, right? When we start to connect to the breath as a conduit for healing or channeling or, any kind of holistic expression, I've noticed that effort decreases, right? Most of us, and maybe you can speak to this, most of us, when we look at our breathing patterns, most of us, are unconscious to what our patterns actually are. And when we do bring conscious awareness to those patterns, they're very sympathetic, right? They're in the chest, they're very low depth, and they're very fast. So this is what I'd love to get your perspective on. Have you noticed that once we start to bring in this conscious divine awareness around our breath, the effort in our primal breath connection actually decreases? It's more of a natural flow.
Vastly. And to name very specifically, what we're doing is restoring to our native state of integration between physical and subtle. Because when you're talking about that sympathetic breath, that's when the two are uncoupled and we're separate and we're going to feel crazy. We're actually going to feel, and then the breath magnifies that because there's, from a labored, non-native breath, we're actually changing the chemicals in our brain. We're activating all sorts of stress compounds. And it can be a bit of a spiraling out. And a lot of us live in this, exist and adapt to this relatively dissociated, not very enjoyable, not very easy to connect to the heart or create coherence in the water in our bodies to tie it all together. So everything I am about and everything osteopathy is about bringing the subtle and the physical bodies back into union.
Yeah.
And then ultimately what happens is the breath surrenders to aligning with really ultimately the pulse of the planet. So when I was in medical school, I was taught that the healthy typical breath was 14 to 18 cycles per minute. And in fact, it's really under 10 cycles per minute by the data that medicine chooses to ignore. Actual tons and tons of data on that. And then when we get into really deeply meditative connected states, we're reflecting the pulse of the planet at a 5.5 breath cycle per minute and in and out. And that cycle actually reflects many mantras and many different disciplines and prayers.
It's funny that, right? It's funny that it always ends up coming back to that. It brings up a point. I'm very honored and grateful that you keep referencing the science with reverence. And I think that's needed. But I also think we need to hold it as a part of the story, not as the story. And the other side of the story is exactly what you just stated, right? It's that a lot of these teachings that we eventually get scientific validation of, we end up seeing that, that validation probably wasn't needed, because if I look back further enough, there is so much tradition behind it. So I want to get your thoughts on this, maybe as within the scientific community. It shows us that if I have an impulse, let's go back to the heart, right? If I have an impulse from my heart that tells me to, let's use the example of the breath, to breathe a certain way, but then I get stuck in the fear consciousness of, but there's no scientific validation for this. It limits me, right? It limits me in a way. Have you noticed this in your work, my friend?
I am unique in a sense in the way that for me, the knowing is so deep that I'm amused when the science confirms what we already know. So when I offer up science, it's for people who are maybe not quite as much like me, occasionally I'll have a part of my brain that appreciates a little bit of that masculine rail of some structure around it. So I don't have a hard and fast rule on that. And I also, in my even, let's go a little layer deeper, we know that our intention and consciousness can shift results to just about anything we want.
That's so it goes back to the water, right? It goes back to
That's right.
Yeah. So as you were sharing about the breath, a question I wanted to ask you, just from your own personal experience and practice with different breathwork modalities, about a month ago, and I'm going to be releasing an episode on this topic in a couple of weeks just for people listening. But a couple of weeks ago, I had the experience of going deeper into a kind of breathwork was very, what's the word? It's very masculine in the way where it induced an altered state, right? It was what I'm thinking, I'm losing the word, the kind of
Sumo breathing.
Yeah, similar to that.
Or
yeah.
holotropic.
Holotropic, that's the word I was trying to think of. Holotropic. And it was an hour of, the specific type. The breath work was called effigy, for people wondering. And what it induced was a very similar state that I would connect to, and this is a whole big topic right now, plant medicines and what plant medicines take you to. So I'm wondering, my friend, if you can comment on your experience with, if you have any, on using the breath within our practice as a way to connect to altered states, right? Altered states within us that can help us with this flow is medicine.
Absolutely. Love it. I check with my body on everything, for one thing, right? Because I think of these cleansing breath styles as, like, imagine, I use the analogy of the resting breath, this breath in coherence and connection with the planet at 5.5 cycles per minute. That's like an idle on a car. And these cleansing breaths are that occasionally you've just got to run that thing. You've got to like flush it out and clear it out and heat it up. And we require different nutrients and different experiences. And so, what we have a lot of is that people kind of think something's a good idea, but they don't necessarily check in with their body. Is it time for a cleansing? Is it time for a deep restoring to my native idol? And the beauty of flow is that it's like you can track the wave right down into our inner compass, where the body can kind of give I'm going to have a little bit more of a surge of coherence in response to your inquiry, or I'm going to kind of maybe get a little shy and shrink back and go, not today, and this is how I choose teachers, and how I really just don't even think about it so much anymore. I just feel like a brightness and an affinity, like a magnetism toward a certain thing. And occasionally the magnetism is towards something that surprises me, and I'll go, well, I didn't expect that, but hey, I'm going to trust my knowing and go in the direction.
Michelle, what you're describing, just for people that maybe are new to this, how I would add my terminology to what you just expressed, that difference between making a choice. What you described is the difference between making a choice from your soul, I call it the soul path, versus making a choice from the ego, right? Where most of us, myself included, we're so conditioned to only making choices from our conditioned ego mind. And we've talked about today in many different components how the mind is a beautiful, powerful piece of us, but most of us have an ego mind that is full of weeds. So we make short-term choices that lead to long-term pain. But what you just described is actually making a choice from the spirit and the soul, which often leads us to more flow and more alignment, right?
Oh, it opens the gate to everything. I recently made quite a huge life shift. It's less than a year ago when I did this very radical thing of basically saying, my body saying, I'm not going to work the way that I was working. I'm not going to take money for the healing that I'm doing. I want to start teaching. I want to start devoting myself to activism in all of these ways with no safety net, financially speaking. But the message was so clear.
Pour it out of you.
And the amount of transformation that's happened in this year since I surrendered to that calling and that voice, which I named at the outset of this podcast, has just been, I'm getting chills right now. It's actually an entire separate book I'm writing on what happened once I actually said yes to my soul's calling.
Michelle, you have to keep me updated on that book, and I'd love to interview when that comes out and we can talk about that whole process. But it's so beautiful. And I want to reiterate this here. This is not a Michelle thing. This is not a Harrison thing. This is a beautiful ability that once we start to connect into the power and presence and potential that we are, one, it's not just remembering that we've always been worthy and divine and enough. We start to then export that divinity. We start to then export that potential, that love into the outside world, whether it's through a book, whether it's through healings, whether it's whatever it is. And I think we forget that power that we all have, right?
Yes, in your words just now, I saw again how we can regard someone from that ego mind as separate and find issues and problems and judgments. And then when we drop in to our source self, as you just named, there's nothing but love that you have, even for someone who's annoying. In fact, I did a practice for a few weeks where and it worked. I'm going to love someone for the things that I criticize, including myself, of course. Like how it's a really powerful practice.
Yeah.
Naming as an offering.
And it goes back to what we were speaking about before. Even if you're new to this practice, to do that, if you can't do it selflessly yet, do it selfishly for you, right? Loving that piece in them, again, is loving that piece in you. I think I might have to make that a t-shirt. Michelle, I have a few more questions here for you today. And, I'm just really grateful for your presence and your light in the world. Another topic that I want to hit on before we wrap this all up is the importance of movement, and specifically walking. I was going through your website yesterday, and this was another piece that stood out to me. And I often speak about on the show, this is the cosmic love antenna. And what that means is I use that analogy of the antenna system because as the importance of the frequency within to connect to is, the antenna also has a structure. It also has a structure on the outside that we need to love and condition and support so our frequency can expand. So I'm wondering if you can speak to, my friend, what is the importance of movement, natural walking in this whole topic we've talked about today?
Well, I wonder if you noticed the entire time we've been talking, I've been in wave motion. I'm never not. I'm often imperceptibly so, because it can be a very subtle hum in the body that I'm yielding to, but I'm never not doing that. And I coach all of my patients, like, you want to not have to come back so soon? This is a beautiful piece. It's not even an obligation. It's an invitation to have a beautiful experience in your body, right? To surrender to this wave motion, and then in walking to move through space like a wave, which has ridiculously powerful healing. I've actually healed I lost a disc in my spine, and I've grown it back through natural walking. It's a way to rebalance all the muscles and as well as the nervous system, because the muscles of the back body actually correlate with the parasympathetics. And mostly what we do is we actually shorten anteriorly, both by the way we sit and by the way we move through space very stiffly, because moving like a wave is quite sensual and decidedly un-American. So you might find this behavior more in people from Latin America or sometimes Europe, and we simply don't do it here. And it took me, tango dancing is a wonderful way to begin to relocate that consciousness in your body. And it's so really, when I watch people and I attempt to teach them in my office, I'm like, okay, this is how we're going to walk now. It's really a retooling in so many deep ways that I believe shifts the energetics and the nervous system so powerfully.
Can you explain that walk, Michelle, just so people, if they want to start doing this today, what would that look like?
Let's do it. Well, firstly, it's like moving through space like an animal. I have people crouch down and really feel all the muscles working and knowing that each joint is basically a spring, the arch of the foot, the ankle, the knee, the hip, and that it's one mechanism, one shock absorbing, expanding and contracting behavior. And to be with the ground as if it's your dance partner. It's like very intentional, very deliberate, very connected. And so it's not this kind of maybe I'll touch here, maybe it's not a sloppy connection. It's a very tensioned, like integral connection. Study an animal moving across, a cat moving across a plane, and then really, really feel. I'm even just invoking the memory of natural walking. I'm becoming so much more tall and expand, and my shoulders are going back, and I'm lengthening through my spine, and I'm feeling more energy. This is a way to be treating yourself osteopathically, which is just basically how nature heals itself, how we heal ourselves through movement and breath and consciousness, giving yourself a healing in every moment of the day. And since I started doing and in receiving more deeply through the teaching of these practices in the last 2 years, I don't have any body pain ever, like ever. And if I start to feel a little something, I'll do a little bit more of a deep, deliberate, growly, primal way that I won't do probably out in public, but I can do it in my house as I need to make my tea. And in short order, I just feel everything reorganizing and settling back into its right alignment. It's so powerful. I just want to scream from the rooftops.
Yeah. I ask too, because it makes me want to get up and just start doing it. I'm definitely going to practice this today. And have you heard of the movement practitioner, Ido Portal? Maybe another powerful man. And
I'm going to write it down.
Yeah. IDOPOTOL or AL. I think you'll find him. And he has something called movement culture. And it's exactly like what you're describing. His symbol is a monkey, a spider monkey with its tail up, right? And it's that same movement, right? It's that same sort of divine expression that why wouldn't we be connected to it? Why would we be separate? Again, this idea of that we are separate to the animal world. This again, that illusion word comes in. And what it brings up in me, my friend, also is don't just do it because you mentioned you're pain free. I would also connect that to, I speak a lot about the inner child healing on this show. And I have people asking me all the time, how can I move through my past pains and my trauma and my wounds from childhood? And do not underestimate the power of how our body can release these stories, right? Release these repressed emotions and meet the needs that were not met, right? Through that expression.
That's right. Our healing, are those body memories, they're imprints, they're actually cell memory in the body. And as we move, we're actually flushing this, burden out of our system, this density and stuckness, which is the opposite of flow. And then we're creating this coherence in our bodies that not only feels so beautiful and nourishing, and literally I can watch cells expand in my skin. I'm naming something very literal. And then we're radiating harmonious, coherent energy into the world around us. It's actually quite a radical act of activism to restore your own fluids to coherence and allow your body and each cell in your body to drink fully in each moment.
It's so beautiful. And then I then think about, if you're a gifted being that has worked out that the way that you express your channel with the world is also through movement, then it's just going to be a explosion, right? Explosion of love and presence and all the beautiful things. Michelle, I have one more question here before we wrap up. But before we get to that, I know that we spoke about before our chat, and I like to do this with guests anyway, beautiful, intuitive guests, much like yourself, I'd like to give you a bit of space to share any kind of practice, or whether it be breath work or a guided meditation or, a poem or a channel, whatever it may be that wants to come through you. Before we wrap up the show, is there anything that you want to express or share with us?
I'm so excited for each person listening to have an immediate response of expansion today, responding to, really receiving the things we're naming. So I want to create it's a very simple little sequence of ways of being in any space. And maybe I'm going to name this first seating. We're seated, and then maybe I'm going to go get in my car and go, visit my daughter, and to really intentionally in every moment notice how gravity is meeting us through our feet. And even perhaps, it's so interesting, it's different each time, how it is that a thread of connection reveals itself. Sometimes for me, it's like a column of light. Sometimes it's actually metal cables. Tune into what feels like wants to express itself in terms of grounding. If you do only that one thing, it's so powerfully supportive to increasing electricity in the body. And then this is a big piece. When seated, do not allow your hip bones to be lower than your knees. If you can, unless you're reclined, you want to fill in the space that the typical chairs that are not supportive of powerful electrical expression. You want to allow the weight to move toward your thighs, toward the front of your sit bones, and free up that central channel mechanically, and allow some, sense of potential of transmitting wave to arrive there. So I tell everyone, fill in the hole in your seat, especially in your car. Bucket seat cars can be really tricky for staying awake. And then to be deliberate with the pelvic floor, tuning into the pelvic floor and noticing if a deliberate tone there can actually begin to hold heat that begins to build. And then allowing the fleshy spine, the front spine, to connect with the bones, because we're actually supporting the emergence of a serpent-like way of being through the center of the body. And then allowing the crown to reach for the sky, and allowing ourselves imagining that you're actually suspended between two powerful poles of holding that can do the work of being in a body and elevate you through wave motion. This is not about good posture. This isn't about working to sit right. This is about surrendering to this powerful, that I believe I'm naming the source of levitation. There's actually the charge, the current can come through and do the work of lifting the body and holding us and moving us in space in elegant, fluid, loving ways. And then one final little piece, to have people experiment with the most effortless, restful amount of contact between the tongue and the palate. Remember, we had a conversation on this some years back, and how this connection is actually an activation and a placeholder for the midline, and just to feel the difference, right? It's not about my words. It's about moving to feeling what these things are like, and really letting the body receive and savor and, play with them, and the amount of this one and that one. And what do you really love and want in this moment? What feels luscious? What feels beautiful? What feels loving? That's the game I play with myself in every moment of the day. So when people say, how do you do it right? I say, ask your body. Go in there and, play with it and find what's right for you.
Oh, I love it. Michelle, that was a beautiful wisdom bomb of both divine guidance and very practical guidance a lot of people can take away from this chat. I'm so happy that you, just as before we wrap up here, so happy that you dropped back in that the microcosmic orbit and connecting the circuit of the tongue onto the top of the palate, because that's, going back to what we talked about at the start of this chat, that's how we met. We met on Clubhouse, just for people interested. We met on Clubhouse talking about the importance of the mouth in general, but just also the form of the mouth and the as you said, the tongue on the top of the mouth and alignment and breathing and all the things. So it's a beautiful full circle, Michelle. It's nice to see that coming home. I want to give you the space here before our final question to share anything that is exciting and going on in your world, my friend. If people have resonated with your deep and vast loving heart and they want to connect to you, they want to watch a webinar, they want to learn more about your upcoming book, where can people go?
I feel all this heat and buzzing in my forehead. I'm not exactly sure why. Okay, guidance. What am I needing to share here? Well, I have an upcoming training, and I am imagining this webinar will probably air after this begins next week. And fear not, because I have an ongoing, very affordable entire school for all of this stuff that have now recorded. And it's very affordable to join it as a self-paced thing. And then every Saturday we spend an hour practicing the tools. It's actually an energy medicine session where we practice the behavior of healing and of tracking the energy and the shifts throughout our bodies and developing the skill to be able to do that in between our group sessions. And so my work in the world now is to offer this training, and it's really almost free, basically. And if you go to my website, there's an ebook I wrote, and it has a way to reach me. And I have a YouTube channel, and I love it when people follow me on social media, although I don't cultivate it too much. There's a lot of really deliberate, beautiful, everything is really very deliberate in that I do end up posting. So
yeah, I just give you a bit of more love here, Michelle. And just for people listening, as always, I'll put all of Michelle's details, her website, the book, where she can be reached in the show notes. So if you just click on the description of the player, you'll see the links and you can click and go straight there. Just to comment on what you said, your deliberate, not just deliberate, but loving intention with the things that you post in the world. Yeah, it's obvious. I see it. Even an example of this, I was on your website yesterday, and you have testimonials on your website, but you don't just have traditional testimonials. Each testimonial is like an individual piece of art that you can look at that not only has the person, but there's a certain frequency behind it. So you can read the words, but just because the way that the testimonial is done in the artistic form that it is in, you feel the words of what that person has said about the work that they've done with you. So I just want to give you love for that, because to me, it highlights, social media technology. It's like anything. It's a tool, and we can get lost in the negative polarity and thinking it's taking us away from our source, our love, all the beautiful things we've talked about today. But we don't spend time looking at how we can channel our love through it. And you do that quite beautifully, my friend. So I just wanted to give you love for that.
Thank you so much. The marketing people I've asked to support me occasionally have a difficult time of it. And they're like, well, what can we plan? How can we write this for you? I'm like, no, every word, every image, every color, every hue is medicine I'm giving to the world. You can't do that for me. You can do your own. I totally support you in doing your own.
I have the same problem. I have the exact same problem. I've tried, which is funny. I've tried hiring people to offload that part of my work, but it's hard to do because exactly what you're saying. Michelle, my final question here today for you is connected to the name of this show. And the name of this show is The Cosmic Love Antenna. And for me, I grew up as a little boy in a religious school, a religious culture, and I was looking to learn what my higher power was in that system. And fortunately/unfortunately, I was very disillusioned with the idea that my higher power was a man on a cloud judging me. So I became atheist, but then was able to come back to my higher power and spiritual understanding through equating the word love with that same power, with that same potential, with that same divinity that is me. So I'm wondering, Michelle, how in your world do you define that love word?
Oh, you're just going to do this to me here in the 11th hour. Oh, well, how do I define it? I don't know that I can do that with words. I'm radiating something to you right now. Can you feel it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's anything but that. And I suppose my experience of harmony, serenity, and peace are an extension of how much I take that as who I am, as who we are.
I think you are the first guest I've had on the show, Michelle, that has answered that question by radiating something from your heart rather than using words. And I know in many ways it highlights the unmanifested, unnameable, undefinable nature of what that word means in many ways. So I love you very much, Michelle. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing your presence with me and the world. Beautiful, beautiful guests, beautiful listeners. Thank you for giving us your attention, your time. If this chat today brought love to your heart, gave you some guidance, please share this far and wide. Leave your perspectives, your opinions, your views over on Spotify and Apple. But regardless, we love you unconditionally. And until next time here on the show, we'll see you again very soon. Bye, everyone. Before I leave you today, beautiful beings, I'm so excited to share a special announcement just with you. On the 20th to the 23rd of April, 2023, I and a fellow guest of the show, the beautiful Ali Paws, will be hosting live in Tulum, Mexico, the Cosmic Heart Tour. If you listen to this podcast week to week and you resonate with my frequency, with my voice, with my love in any of the topics I share with you, then most likely it is time for us to connect and heal in person. So I invite you to join us in Mexico. Join us for some meditations, activations, yoga, cranial sacral therapy, a book release, a live Q&A, poetry, and so much more. These spots are going to fill up super quick because our intention is to make this exclusive and intimate. So please DM me Cosmic Heart Tour on any of my social channels. That's Cosmic Heart Tour on any of my social channels, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and we'll book in a meeting so you can join the love. I'm so excited to connect with you in the flesh. Thank you for listening to the Cosmic Love Antenna with me, your host, Harrison. If you gained value or this episode hit your heart, please remember to share this out with a friend, a family member, or a lover. You can also leave your love over on Apple reviews and Spotify star feedback, and this helps me spread my frequency to more souls in need. Finally, if you want to connect with me deeper, want to reach out, interested in coaching, please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn at Harrison Meagher, spelled Meagher. Sending you so much love.